I came back from USCAP, the United States and Canadian Academy of Pathologists annual conference, and then I saw this post by College of American Pathologists go viral on LinkedIn. At the time of this recording, it has 1,299 reactions, 41 comments, and 290 reposts, which in the pathology space is like really viral. Breaking news: LDT update, federal court decision. Court throws out LDT rule. To give you a little bit more context why the pathology community is so excited about this decision.
Learn about the newest digital pathology trends in science and industry, meet the most interesting people in the niche, and gain insights relevant to your own projects. Here is where pathology meets computer science. You are listening to the Digital Pathology Podcast with your host, Dr. Alexandra Zhurov.
In May 2024, the FDA dropped a bombshell, a final rule that LDTs are medical devices under the Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act. This meant labs would FDA approval or clearance for thousands of tests, a process costing a lot of money. The FDA said it was about patient safety, citing cases of faulty tests. So what are LDTs, lab-developed tests, and why do they matter? So LDTs, or lab-developed tests, are diagnostic tests that are designed and validated to be used in one single lab. So think of them as custom tools for diagnosing diseases, rare diseases, cancer, guiding cancer treatments, or monitoring patient responses. And they're not commercial kits. They're tailored by pathologists, lab professionals, or vendors to meet specific patient needs, and they are confined to this one laboratory. And they are super important in precision medicine. For example, a lab can develop a test to detect a mutation, validate a new biomarker, or, for example, use a device that is not a medical device, like a scanner, within a certain lab. So that would be relevant for digital pathology, that you could use digital pathology. You could create scans, use a scanner within a CLIA lab as an LDT. This meant that lab-developed tests would need FDA clearance or approval to be used. And that would mean like thousands of tests not being available because they would have to go through the approval or clearance process. And that would also mean very high costs. And the FDA said this is about patient safety. They cited cases of faulty tests, but this, of course, met serious criticism, and the critics, including CAP, College of American Pathologists, said this is going to crush innovation, limit access to tests, especially for rare diseases and underserved populations. And obviously it's going to be super costly. How costly? The FDA's estimates were, listen to this, $79 billion in compliance costs over 20 years. So that would affect us for the next 2 decades. And obviously for small labs, small companies, that would just mean that they wouldn't exist anymore. So a lawsuit happened. Labs and medical groups swiftly sued, leading to American Clinical Laboratory Association versus FDA. And 2 main arguments emerged. First, statutory authority. Plaintiffs argued that FDA never had the authority to actually regulate LDTs. The FDCA defines devices as actually tangible products and not lab services. And lab services were granted the CMS oversight via CLIA by the Congress, instead of being regulated by the FDA. This was a law specifically for lab quality. And then the other argument was that it was arbitrary and capricious. I love this, capricious. FDA was capricious. CAP's amicus brief highlighted the FDA's failure to justify the rule's costs or explain how its non-binding enforcement discretion policies would prevent test shortages. The FDA countered that LDTs have evolved into complex tests requiring its oversight, but the court wasn't convinced. The court made the decision on Monday, March 31st, and the Eastern District of Texas delivered a sweeping win for labs. Judge Jordan ruled the FDA overstepped its authority because LDTs are services, not devices. So the FDCA's text mentions words like machine and contravents. These refer to physical products, and LDTs are professional services that are already regulated under CLIA. And Congress drew the line already in 1988 with CLIA 1988 amendments. They created a separate framework for labs. And if Congress wanted FDA involved, it would have said so. Also, the enforcement discretion isn't a fix. And the court called the FDA's reliance on non-binding policies a house of cards that failed to address the rule's catastrophic costs. And the ruling vacated the final rule, halting the FDA's oversight immediately. So it wasn't in effect even for a year. It was less than a year in May. Last year, this whole debacle started, so to say. And what's the impact of the current state for pathology and specifically digital pathology? For most pathologists, it's a relief. Labs can continue to develop LDTs without FDA hurdles. And those LDTs are critical for rare diseases, for small volume tests that aren't profitable for commercial kits. They make it possible to innovate rapidly, tailoring tests for new therapies or emerging pathogens fast. We still remember COVID. And for digital pathology, the main area affected are the AI-based LDTs. So all the algorithms, image analysis-based algorithm for cancer detection, for pathology support, they can keep being used as LDTs. And we know that the path or the goal is to have the algorithms that we want to scale, that are good enough and can have really massive impact, to have them as medical devices, as software as a medical device. But there are many that are not there yet, or are in the initial stage of development, or more data is needed, but they can already help patients and help pathologists as a lab developed test. Obviously, the fight isn't over. The FDA may appeal, and Congress could revive the VALID Act. And this is a bill to create a risk-based framework for LDTs, so high, medium, and low risk LDTs. And CAP actually supports this approach but opposes FDA overreach. So to recap, LDTs stay under CLIA for now. Labs can breathe a little easier, but they need to stay vigilant. I mean, as long as I have been in the digital pathology space, which is around a decade right now, this has been like hanging somewhere there that FDA is gonna rule the lab developed test, and finally they said, oh yes, we're gonna do it, and now it unhappened. Who knows what's gonna happen later, but for now, and this is not the case, they're not regulating LDTs. For me, this is a win for digital pathology, and the AI-driven LDTs, image-based biomarkers that are being developed as LDTs can continue being used as such, with, a parallel path to some of them, or some vendors, some developers, going the software as a medical device path, so we can have both. If Congress holds the pen, the VALID Act could still reshape LDT regulations, and as CAP brief warned, the FDA's rule would have forced labs to abandon tests, delay diagnosis, and hike costs. And as they say, this decision preserves pathologists, medical professionals' role as innovators and not just service providers or manufacturers. As I told you at the beginning, I have not seen a pathology-related post go so viral, so I needed to do this podcast. If you want to learn more and actually read in depth the documents I based this podcast on, then go ahead to the CAP website. Everything is cited there. I'm going to put it in the show notes as well. If you know somebody who would benefit from listening to this, please share it with them. Copy the link and share it, or repost it. I will very much appreciate it. And I talk to you in the next episode.